Hello, and welcome to the SMART Recovery Podcast, where we offer thoughtful conversation about a variety of recovery topics. You'll hear self-empowering and science-based approaches to making changes toward a healthier and more satisfying lifestyle and building a life beyond addiction. Our mission is for every podcast to provide you with the information and resources you need to guide your own successful recovery journey. If you or someone you know needs addiction-related help, we encourage you to visit smartrecovery.org, where you will find practical tools, connections to support group meetings, and links for additional resources. Remember that the purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care from a doctor or other qualified addiction professionals. Before making any changes in your treatment plan, please discuss your thoughts with your medical provider. Now sit back and enjoy today's SMART Recovery Podcast.
Welcome to the SMART Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Frazier. Today on the podcast, we have Chuck Novak. He's a regional coordinator for New Hampshire for SMART Recovery and a master licensed alcohol and drug counselor. It's going to be a real good conversation. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to talk about issues having to do with recovery, incarceration, courts, and similar kinds of things. But first, before we start this conversation, I want to mention a new way you can get involved in overcoming the addiction epidemic by supporting SMART Recovery's vital work. We have a new program called Insiders Plus, and you can become an insider by choosing to make a small monthly contribution to SMART. As an insider, you'll receive recognition, invitations to exclusive events, and more. Perhaps most importantly, you'll have an opportunity to influence the future of SMART by having your input shared directly with SMART Recovery leadership. Help us help others lead life beyond addiction. Visit smartrecovery.org/insiders for more information and to sign up. Now on to our conversation. Chuck Novak, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing these podcasts. I enjoy them.
Good. I know you said you actually have done a podcast recently, and I just hope this one is as fun and interesting as that one.
I'm sure it will be.
Yeah, of course, you're the guest, so it's up to you to be interesting, not me.
Thank you for the pressure.
Yeah. So let's just start with some of your personal and professional background, Chuck. Just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I guess I will start with my addiction. I got addicted. I got arrested. I spent Y2K and those years, 19,000. So I spent about 5 years locked up. 5 straight Christmas, 5 straight birthdays. So I was involved in the criminal justice system from that end. I got out in 2004. I ended up going to school and I ended up getting into counseling. And now I focus my work here in New Hampshire with reentry resource counseling. Mm-hmm. And I focus on people that are returning citizens, people mm-hmm. that are getting out of this system and trying to keep them out and having them live a life like SMART says, a life beyond addiction,
right?
Beyond crime, a new life.
Now take me back to 2004 then. You were released from incarceration. What did that feel like? Did you feel ready to re-enter? Did you feel ready to return?
I felt ready. I felt scared, I guess, that I didn't know I felt scared until I got out. And simple things like ordering a sandwich was freaked me out. Like they asked me what I wanted on my sub and they just kept going on. And I wasn't ready to make these decisions. I was used to, here's your food, you get it through a hole and you eat it or you don't.
Right.
And she kept asking me, do you want pickles? They do that in New England.
Yeah.
Do you want mayonnaise? What do you? And I was like, just make it like, for the first year of my life, I think I said, just make it like the picture. Just.
Oh, okay. All right. That was a choice that seemed pretty easy for you and didn't have to make too many decisions like that. The reason I'm asking is, I've talked to others who relate to our audience about leaving incarceration and the word ready. Okay. Everyone's ready. You're probably ready the first day you get into the prison or system. But are you prepared? are you prepared? And just from that little story, you weren't necessarily prepared to function in such a in such a multifaceted kind of society, kind of environment.
No, not the way I thought I was. Not the way I thought I was.
Hmm.
I mean, I actually felt fortunate for the little bit of programming that I did get within the prison system.
Hmm.
It did help me going forward. It did help me moving on, but there were a lot of the little life skill scenarios you
Sure.
just really aren't ready for.
Sure, sure. Now, okay, so there you are. You're a returning citizen. By the way, I love that nomenclature because that's exactly right. I mean, men, women who come out of prison, they're still a citizen. They're still a part of society. In fact, isn't it true that most people who are incarcerated are going to end up back in society? Lifers are not as prevalent as, as others.
Almost all. And the people that are in prison, that's still a society. There were people I met that are not getting out, and I still care for them, and they still have meaningful lives.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So there you are. As I said, you're a returning citizen. What got you interested in counseling and kind of giving back to the environment or the kind of people that you had been associated with as they left their incarceration? What got you interested?
Wow. I don't know if this is a good answer. It's not I don't know if this makes me out to be a good guy or something, but I knew I needed to do a different job,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I knew selling drugs was going to be out. I was a photographer for a long time, but I didn't want to do what I was doing that, you know, led me to that life. So I wanted a new life.
Hmm.
And I wanted to do something easy.
Hmm. Okay. Well, look, that's valid. You were looking around. You were trying to see what was what and sort out the rest of your life. I don't see any
Physically.
problem. Yeah.
When you're a criminal, you don't have a good retirement plan. So I wanted to do something that you could roll me out. And I'd figured one day we would just be able to do this on Zoom, this counseling. And I realized I was too old to like try to learn roofing or get up
Hmm.
on
Yeah.
do those physical labor things. And
Right.
I said, this is something I could do for a long time,
Right.
have a nice little office.
You know what that reminds me of is, that's a practical decision. That's a very, you looked at some options. You said, you know what, I can't go back to being a criminal, selling drugs. I can't do these things I don't know anything about, or the physical challenges that I'm just not up for. I mean, believe me, I know all about that. I get sore just trying to clean my gutters. Okay, so that's my contribution to the aging situation. Anyway, so it's practical. And that overlaps with smart recovery. Smart recovery is nothing if not practical tools for people to use. Isn't that true?
Practical recovery. Our
Hmm.
president, Tom Harbaugh, I got a lot of, education and insight just from watching him and learning and going to that website. So yeah, smart recovery, practical recovery,
Yeah.
being practical.
We'll get into a little bit more of that when you talk about the kinds of things you do using an InsideOut program, as it's called, that Smart Recovery developed, and successful life skills. But first, let me remind folks that they're listening to the Smart Recovery podcast. This is Luke Frazier. We're talking with Chuck Novak. He's the regional coordinator for Smart Recovery for New Hampshire. So let's pick up there. You were, for a very practical reason, decided to pursue a counseling degree or become a counselor in some way. How'd you figure out how to do that? Did you look around at different education programs, or did you have a mentor?
I was told to go to college. Um, I started to go to college. Was going to pursue a law degree. And then I saw that I had earned a paralegal certificate on my own in prison, but then I saw that the paralegal jobs were getting outsourced to India. You had to have 5 years experience. So I thought I was a little too far behind the curve to become a paralegal and continue on with the law school. This seemed to be something I just kind of fell into.
Hmm.
I had done some of the recovery, 28-day recovery in sober houses and halfway houses. And this just kind of became something I kind of fell into.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you gravitated toward it for some reason, and whether it was perfectly conscious or not, I think a lot of our decisions in life kind of are a combination of things, where we're drawn and attracted to, maybe on a less conscious level, although it sounds like you were very, again, practical. Where did you first learn about SMART recovery?
Well, in the prison system, we did not have SMART recovery, but we did have a book, a universal book. It was about rational recovery, maybe 1999.
Okay.
More of it has some Albert Ellis forward in it, and it had the ABC tool, and it mentioned the alternative programs, and it had a couple lists: rational recovery, SMART recovery. It had a couple listed, and that was it. It was like a one-page reference, but it put the name in there. I realize now that the program I learned in prison really was two of them. It had three, I would say the three main tools that I use, that I still use, that I preach and use. The first video they showed me was some guy would slick the puppet, and I was like, my life sucks. I've watching some guy do this bad slick the puppet thing, and here I'm in prison, and this is going to be my next 6 months.
Oh boy!
But slick the puppet was the voice of addiction, and I even use a little puppet now.
Oh, for our listeners, it's let's see, it's a small handheld puppet with a couple of, let's see, tufts of hair kind of. And what is he holding there?
It is actually, that's a lock. It's actually Harry Houdini. So he's in a straight jacket.
Oh, okay. Straight jacket. Okay.
That's the crazy voice of addiction. So it's
Okay.
like how I use the disarm tool. And that's what this it was like the most stupid thing, but here it is 20 years later, and I can still remember the guy, the name of the puppet. And it was the voice of addiction. And it basically was the disarm tool.
Okay.
Cutting off that voice.
Excuse me, let me interrupt and go back for a second. You mentioned the ABC tool, and although a lot of our listeners will know what that is, for those who don't, let me just quickly, I believe it's the use of an activating event, what is happening in your life that may be drawing you to a negative behavior, beliefs about that event, and then the emotional consequences. What is that a good shorthand for the ABC tool, or how would you add to that?
That is a good shorthand. And I say the most important letter of the ABC tool is the D, where you start to dispute the beliefs. So it doesn't make it into the title, but that's, my favorite letter.
Sure.
Tool.
Does this make sense? I'm going to question it, dispute it.
Right. Yeah, and dispute. So like I said, I wanted to be a lawyer. So the first start is with every thought, belief, attitude that I have. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence to support this? And that's my go-to. And then ask a few other rational questions and challenge that.
Okay.
But we use that over and over and over again. I would do like 5 a day.
Becomes a habit. It becomes something that just is a part of your way of functioning in the world, and very useful. You went on to mention another tool that you said you use often. What was that?
That would be the CBA, and I think this is a common tool for cost-benefit analysis or risk-reward, depending on exactly what you're trying to, decisional balance worksheet, what you're trying to decide, but just the pros and cons.
Right.
Just what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the risks, what are the rewards?
Yeah, and that's, again, something that once you get in the habit of doing, if it becomes second nature, then any decision that comes along. I mean, should I eat this bag of Doritos and I'll end up feeling very lousy afterward and then not do anything but sit on the couch? I mean, even that kind of decision. Is that true?
That's true. And what I've been thinking of lately, as you evolve and you learn to just embrace the tools your own way. I'm big on like mashups, right? So I've been mashing up different watch bands with different covers and mashup thing. but it's like you use these tools within the tools. So
Mhm.
as I'm doing the ABC, I stop and then I might end up doing, I'm going to refer back to my hierarchy of values.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because
Which
that's
is a worksheet at Smart Recovery meetings that participants use.
I'm going to start viewing the risk and rewards of potential behavior changes of my thoughts, so I've like started to learn how I'm using these tools within the tools. I'm using the tools.
Okay. Is that part of your facilitation, Chuck, that you display or demonstrate or share what you do with the tools with participants?
Yes, I'm going to get up on the whiteboard and we're out on the doing a facilitating a meeting. I noticed that I've started doing that more and more, and I'm
Hmm.
starting to just recognize that I do that more and more, and that's kind of showing. I think I'm trying to show how the tools are related.
Hmm. Yeah, and they do have a direct relationship, and so there is no need to say, "Well, wait a minute, that's not specifically part of this tool. Let me see how it is influenced by other tools," and adding up together to a greater impact. Let's say. Um, Before we get into other tools that you use, including the Inside Out program and Successful Life Skills book, let me ask you first: what a regional coordinator? Tell people about that, what that means for Smart Recovery being a regional coordinator.
Well, it's a role that's morphing. It's not an easy role. It's not hard, but it's not easy. You could um, you could refer to it as trying to herd cats because
I know about that. I've had some jobs that are just like that.
people who run smart recovery meetings are going to end up wanting to be very independent, and um, they, sometimes you don't get connected with them. You don't know what they're doing in the field. So just trying to track to find out what is going on in the field is part of it. But ideally, I like to offer support to the
Hmm.
other facilitators.
Hmm.
It's um, it's a big area, even though New Hampshire is a small state, but getting behind them, having them come to meetings,
Yeah,
maybe having facilitator workshops, try to get together, be
sure.
open for communication and just bounce ideas. And it's great with Zoom because I've had a couple, probably like 3 people be able to just join in on the Zoom meeting. And now
Mm.
we're going to start a meeting um, maybe 100 miles from here
Hmm.
and build in those community centers. So we've had some
Yeah.
good luck with working with the recovery community centers
Yeah.
in New Hampshire.
Okay. Well, you use the word support. The meetings themselves are mutual support, and it sounds like that's parallel to the regional coordinator offering support to the facilitators because they're out there kind of trying to do what they can do the best way they can.
That's my main goal, to offer support to the facilitators. Some of them don't want it, but to offer the support there and to get the Smart Recovery name out there,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, get it out there and how it's presented. So, for a long time, no, it's not moderation drinking. No,
Hmm.
it's not rational
Hmm.
recovery.
Hmm.
Um, it's uh, it's not an alternative to AA. It's
Hmm.
another choice to AA.
Yeah, that's very important, Chuck. And that's something I certainly, in my role at Smart Recovery, try to stress is that if you define things by what they're not, you're losing an opportunity to tell people what they are. Or at least you're delaying telling them what they are. If you start out with, well, it's not this, not this, not this, as opposed to, smart recovery is a really effective pathway to recovery that's based on science and mutual support. However, you're going to go into the actual explanation. So I think that's important, and I'm glad to hear that that's being done out there in the great live free or die state of New Hampshire.
Freedom of choice.
Freedom of choice. That's excellent. So there you are, kind of learning more about SMART, becoming a facilitator first, I imagine, before a regional coordinator. Is that right?
Yes, my history was SMART. I started like 2006 when I was in college, a college project. I built a little SMART recovery website. I did my program was Get Smart, named after the best TV show of my childhood. So Get Smart, New Hampshire. And I put together the website. I got an A in the class. I did a couple meetings in Lowell, Mass. Um, I met Joe Gerstein, but I wasn't ready to take on any role of running meetings. We had no meetings in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
My personal life wasn't steady yet. I just had a newborn.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be probably until 2012 when 2013, something like that. I was working in a detox. I took the training again. We implemented smart recovery into detox.
Mm-hmm.
I implemented something I called Operation Bedbug.
Mm.
So
That doesn't sound too pleasant, Chuck. I don't know about our audience, but that doesn't sound too pleasant to me.
but it worked.
Okay. What was it? I'm not sure.
Everybody who came into the detox, so I was working in Manchester, the biggest detox in the state at the time. Everybody who came into the state was going to get infested with smart recovery. So their detox program was they're going to learn about the hierarchy of values. They're going to learn about cost benefit analysis, the ABC, and then they're going to go off into other rehabs.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to tell the counselors, and the counselors go, "What the heck is a smart recovery?" And maybe they'll Google it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll start to do worksheets. And they started to say, "Hey, maybe we want to get a smart recovery. Can you come do a presentation?"
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how we spread from no meetings to 20 some meetings, and it goes up and down.
I like that. That's quite an arresting image because bed bugs spread and, and they really infest. That's an interesting term. So, you can say, well, there's awareness and there is education, but you know what? Spread of bed bugs really captures the sense of what you were trying to do.
Yeah, and it was a very city Manchester thing to do. So
Okay.
I don't know. I think maybe I have to implement the Project Scabies for the prisons.
Oh boy.
Same thing. If you can get the prisons promoting some smart recovery, which we've had some success in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
They don't officially do an inside out. They use a little bit of the inside out. They use a little bit of this workbook. They use a little bit of that workbook, but they're introducing SMART at least now.
Okay.
More than just a mention or a paragraph. And then maybe when those people get out of jail, they'll start looking for the meetings. So.
Okay. Well, you're listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. We're not an extermination podcast. We're really talking about smart recovery with Chuck Novak, talking about recovery, incarceration, the courts, and some of the tools. And that's where I want to go next, Chuck. Tell folks about using the InsideOut program. And I know also you refer to or in some ways use the Successful Life Skills program or handbook, excuse me.
Use the handbook, you select worksheets. It depends who I'm working with. The InsideOut program is the Smart Recovery Program with the addition of criminal thinking errors, which are just what's the word I'm thinking of?
Additional kinds of focus on
the extension. They're an extension of irrational thinking errors.
Okay.
They're irrational thinking errors. One of the things that fits perfectly for me is that the InsideOut identifies 8 criminal thinking errors, and that is what the Bureau of Prisons and what a lot of the other programs in jails also use. So it's kind of like the 8 accepted criminal thinking errors, though you could buy anybody's book who could come up with a list of 12 different ones. They just rename them and renumber them to sell a book.
So really alignment with the Bureau of Prisons with what SMART has going with InsideOut.
It aligns perfectly. And in fact, in some literature that I've seen within the federal system, they recommend smart recovery for their participants because it's more in line with the programming that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
than the other choices, than
Okay.
the 12-step choices.
Okay. And that means there might be more impact, more effectiveness, at least with this population, because they have the errors in thinking. I mean, I'm trying not to go with they and them, but folks who are incarcerated have in some way had some thinking errors. Is that fair to say?
Their best thinking got them there. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
There's irrational thinking, unhealthy attitudes, but then
Mhm.
also with the criminal thinking.
Sure.
And
And you mentioned the Bureau of Prisons. I also am aware you're a consultant with the federal drug court system. What is that all about?
part of our one of our contracts with Reentry Resource Counseling is that we coordinate and offer services for the federal drug court in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
So I do individual counseling. I do another cognitive behavior group specific for the
Mm-hmm.
drug court.
Do drug courts know enough about, at least in New Hampshire? I mean, you may not know other state systems, but do they know enough about smart recovery?
I'm going to say no, they don't know enough. Some
Okay.
of them do. There are drug courts that still require you participate in other programs. They don't understand what smart recovery is
Mm-hmm.
necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It would really be helpful if they understood that smart recovery through the InsideOut and the life skill, successful life skill workbook has very specific, like that is almost made for people in drug court with the
Mm-hmm.
budgeting, a little focus on the anger. It's not just stop doing drugs. It's the probation officer yesterday was like, they're not doing drugs. This is like they need to learn how to do life. These
Okay.
two knuckleheads need to know how to do life.
Yeah. No
Drug
longer what not to
fun.
do. Again, you were talking about this, not just what not to do. Hey, don't go out and rob a bank, but what to do. And that's look for these resources and take advantage of these services.
And you know what tools I plug in there then is the life balance, the VASI, so life balance where you look at your whole life and what's out of balance, what do you want to improve, and then merge or mash up with a change plan. Okay, now let's make a change plan for that one area. And the VASI, another acronym, vitally absorbing creative interest.
Creative interest?
A vitally absorbing creative interest. So
Okay.
one of our smart tools, and that became a VASI, became like a verb that people were like, my VASI, this is my VASI. Maybe that's an adverb, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
people are like, it could be drawing, it could be back to music, painting,
Yeah.
photography.
Right. Right.
Try to get other interests beyond addiction. And that's important, very
Sure.
important. And that's
Sure.
one of the components that drug court, I don't know, I think maybe sometimes they miss. And that's something that I use with my clients individually and get them interested in something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a really great point because I share with the audience that I'm in recovery as well, and that is definitely something. Well, I have this time that I used to spend abusing, misusing drugs and alcohol. What am I going to do with it? Am I going to go to a museum? Am I going to get involved with sports? And that will be something that then I can pour energy into, and not have to think. Well, I'm sitting here ruminating on how I could be doing a crime and getting cash or something crazy like that, something irrational, if you will, like that. So that federal drug court system needs to be infested, to use your your terminology earlier. And that's part of what you do as a regional coordinator is make presentations. How many presentations do you make, or do you make them just as often as you can?
As often as I can, COVID has changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
So people haven't really been asking you to come around.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot more of my outreach now has been having facilitators drop in on my meetings through Zoom or
Mhm.
in person.
Mm-hmm.
I still do both of those. I think I have done some video presentations to some of the recovery centers and community that probably have to hit them up again now that COVID stopped,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and see what we can do to reignite some of the interest.
Yeah. Chuck, tell me about kind of the one-on-one counseling. We've gone from presentations to group meetings to different kinds of things with groups of people. What is it like to use SMART in one-on-one counseling?
That's probably my favorite. That's where I use it the most. It's what I'm comfortable with. They're good, solid, tested CBT tools. I I like to start off with the hierarchy of values. It doesn't necessarily, you don't know what the order is. It's not a cookie cutter process, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, sometimes I work with people who are in the system just because they're trying to get their license back for DWI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know SMART has never tried to make a DWI program, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a perfect program for this quick 6 session. DWI is the main problem that brought them in, but it gets them to look at their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And you start with the hierarchy of values, because I'm going to go back to the values. Well, how is this affecting your values? So,
Mm-hmm.
and when you
Mm-hmm.
want to do the cost benefit analysis, what are the benefits? What are the costs? What are the risks? What are the rewards? How does this affect your values?
Yeah. Well, it
And
opens up. It hope. I'm sorry.
I was going to say then the ABC,
Mm-hmm.
and then how did that affect your values? So you keep
Yeah.
coming back to that.
Well, I was going to say it opens up people's eyes. Like you said, maybe a DUI, or they would call it DUI in Ohio, DWI, um, and they come in and want to just get their sessions done, get their license back. But by asking them about their values, by asking them about the kinds of decisions they're making, that has a real potential for helping them achieve a better life balance.
That would be one of the last steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And SMART, as you said earlier, encourages life beyond addiction, not just stopping using, but you're really creating a life, and that's that creative interest again that we just talked about. Um, Anything else as we wrap up here, Chuck? Anything else? Any advice for those who are kind of embarking on their recovery journey?
Well, my advice is, it's, I don't know what is the one thing I would say. You go to Smart Recovery.
Yeah, and make sure that you have give it a chance too. Is that making sure it's not just one and done, but trying to give it a chance? Is that a good part of kind of advice to people?
Well, I think for it, when I'm giving advice to people, I like to, well, I guess we try to stay away from advice, right? We want them to come to this
Hmm.
conclusion.
Oh yeah, I forgot. You're a counselor. You're not supposed to tell people what to do.
Right. But that I hope that they find out that there's a life, go to our mouth. There's a life beyond addiction. If I'm going to give, like, all right, I only have 10 minutes to counsel this person. That's it.
Mm,
Your insurance doesn't work, so I got 10 minutes.
mm,
This
mm,
is it. I might just try to use the Viktor Frankl analogy about there being stimulus and response.
mm-hmm,
Within that space is your power. It's your power of choice. It's your ability to use whatever smart recovery tool is going to help you.
mm-hmm.
Whatever one is your means the most, resonates the most with you, to apply with that first, and then it's always comes down to keep in the forefront of your mind, what are your goals and values?
Mm-hmm.
And are you helping your goals and values, or are you undercutting your goals and values?
Yeah.
Keep focused on the goals and values. So first, what are your goals and values? Learn your goals and values. And then I love that the Smart Recovery Beyond Addiction, because one of the, we talked about the titles and, avoiding labels, and even the recovery label.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe I've just bored with it because it's been 20 years. But I'm like,
well, wait, I'm not sure I followed the word recovery or what recovery label are you talking about?
the word recovery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to be in recovery. I heard someone at a SMART conference said, I don't want to identify myself by something I last did during the Clinton administration.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Okay.
The process is uncovering the irrational thoughts, recover some health and sanity and, clarity, but the goal should be discovery and discovering life beyond addiction. And, that's where the work in Avasi and really engaging in life beyond addiction. Like I said, filling that hole with things that there would be no reason. My life is so good now. I don't even have to, why would I go backwards?
Okay. Okay. Staying in the moment, staying in the forward thinking and the, making sure that you're doing everything you can to support those values, to support the kinds of behaviors that work for you rather than don't. Well, Chuck, that was an excellent conversation. I really appreciate it. I think our audience knows that you have a lot to give and that you've been giving for many years to others who have been around SMART and also those who need to know about SMART. Chuck Novak, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you very much, Luke.
And before we end today, I want to remind you something we talked about at the beginning. Smart Recovery has a new program called Insiders Plus, and you can become an insider by choosing to make a small monthly contribution to SMART. As an insider, you'll receive recognition, invitations to exclusive events, and more. And really importantly, with the Insider Plus, you'll have an opportunity to influence the future of SMART by having your input shared directly with Smart Recovery leadership. You can go to smartrecovery.org/insiders for more information and to sign up. You've been listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. This is your host, Luke Frazier. Until the next time on the Smart Recovery Podcast, stay healthy and stay connected.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. Be sure to visit smartrecovery.org, where you can subscribe to our e-newsletter and check out additional podcasts, blogs, videos, and more. If you found today's podcast interesting and helpful, we encourage you to share it with others. You can also find information about SMART facilitator training and other ways to participate in our important work. To help us continue to provide recovery support to all the individuals who need us, please consider making a tax-deductible donation at smartrecovery.org/donation, or simply click the donate button on our homepage. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll join us for the next Smart Recovery Podcast. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy.